everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So, when it comes to the movies of the 1950s, when I saw the Gigant Claw, I just assumed from the start, well, this is going to be another one of these one-digit rating movies that I have seen. But the further this movie went, the better it got. I was a little confused by this because, you know, the start of this movie wasn't very good, and when we get the reveal 28 minutes in, that's even worse. But somehow they were able to work their way back to actually, you know, make a movie that technically isn't good, but it is probably one of the least horrendously awful sci-fi movies from the 1950s I've seen. But what is the Gigant Claw about? That's what we're gonna find out today. This is the Gigant Claw. Planes are disappearing from the sky and nobody knows why this is happening. We have this test pilot called Mitch who claims that he has seen a UFO. Has that something to do with, you know, the planes that are disappearing? Unfortunately, no one really believes him because they cannot see this thing on the radar and, you know, stuff like that. So they are kind of lost in this thing. But after 28 minutes of uncertainty, we will finally be able to see what we are up against. And it is this thing. And when this thing came up the first time, I started laughing almost uncontrollably. It was one of the most worthless things I've ever seen. It looked so ridiculous with its bug-out eyes and, you know, this Doc Brown hair and stuff like that. It was difficult to see what looked most awful about it, but it got even worse when it started to eat these styrofoam buildings and munching on these styrofoam planes and stuff like that. And I was about to call in the cinematic airstrike on this one and saying, well, this is going to be a, you know, 6 or 7 point or something like that. However, then it started to actually mend itself. You see, some of the effects in this movie are a little bit better than, you know, the dog-ass worst of the 1950s sci-fi movies. So it had that going on for itself. But what I think was the most compelling and what I think saved this movie was Mitch and Sally, our two main characters, because they are so likable as characters and we care about them, we understand them. And there's also one thing that always appeals to me a lot when it comes to movies, and that is characters who is not believed by either, you know, their employers or the authorities or their significant others, when we know that they are, you know, correct about this thing. And this movie has a lot of that, and that helped this movie a lot. I mean, probably this movie doesn't really work that well when it comes to the science, because I think that is probably, you know, dog ass as well. But the thing is that because they follow the rules that this movie has set up, then it actually works. I mean, this movie has a lot of sequences that does not work. Most of them includes this embarrassingly looking poultry thing, and whenever, you know, we have sequences with it, I want to grab the nearest pillow to hide my face because of sheer embarrassment. But this movie still worked. You know, it is not a good movie, but considering the, you know, very short runtime of 75 minutes, it's still able to actually tell a really good story that you can follow and that you can understand and that you can sympathize with, especially because, you know, the characters are so good. The acting may not be the most impressive thing I've ever seen, but nobody is horrendously awful. They try their best and they are engaged in what they are doing. So do I recommend this movie? Not necessarily, but considering how bad I thought this movie was going in, I'm surprised how actually quite decent this movie was. The Gigant Claw is a 1950s sci-fi movie, and if you like that sort of things, or if you're glutton for punishment, you can see it, but it is much better than the Burt I. Gorton types of movies. But it is a movie that essentially is a effects-driven movie with terrible effects. Not awfully terrible, but quite terrible. This is essentially also a movie that has a difficulty level of 10 and an execution level of 3. It probably should have been the opposite, but with all these bad Hollywood remakes that, they're trotting out, can't they at least make a remake of a movie that actually has a good, compelling story, rather than, movies that we've seen before, but they just, put a little bit of a new paint on? The Giant Claw is not great, but it has a good intention to itself, and it works surprisingly well. So if we take out all of these horrendously bad and magnificently awful sequences with the actual bird and the styrofoam planes and the styrofoam buildings, and just focusing on the actual adventure that this movie has and the moral dilemmas that our main character is facing, this is an awesome movie. Unfortunately, we cannot overlook this stinking turkey that every now and then has to invade this picture. But The Giant Claw is still, in my opinion, a pretty decent movie considering what I thought about it from the beginning. And I give this movie 37 points. My God, what they could have done with this with a big budget. Some character actors, a good director, and a decent special effects budget. But now we don't have that. But considering how bad I thought this movie was going to be, it was far better than I expected it to. So have you seen The Giant Claw? What did you think about it? Comment below and I'll see you next time for, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.